Right, as it stands, one of 3 teams will be relegated on the final day of the Premier League season, although Sunderland will stay up if they get at least a point tonight against Arsenal. Now, Newcastle and Hull are the other teams involved, and as you can see, we've got former Hull chairman Paul Duffen in the studio with us. Paul, good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for coming on. Now, it'll be very nervous for the 3 teams involved, or at least 2 teams involved. How difficult is it to watch the game as a chairman of one of those clubs? Because you've been there before.
Yeah, and I think from the boardroom or the director's box perspective, it's very difficult because you have little or no influence. And I think particularly for Hull City this time round, because they're a bit shell-shocked that they're in this position at all. I was at the Burnley game a couple of weeks ago, and if you think that their run-in, they didn't do too badly accumulating points. They got 7 points in February, they picked up 2 in March, 6 in April. By normal standards, that should have kept them pretty safe. Now, three defeats on the spin in May and other sides around them starting to win has made it very nervy. And as I said, I felt the nerves. I think everybody did there for the Burnley game because that was the must-win game. And obviously, sadly, they lost that game. So now they're in a very difficult position.
Well, it's looking like Sunderland and Newcastle and Hull again for that final relegation spot. Now, we know what happened in 2009. You'll remember it. And Hull, of course, survived that day. What are your memories of it? Was it pure joy or was it relief?
It was a slightly different position because obviously we were 1 point above Newcastle going into that last game. So provided we at least matched their score, we were going to be fine. We lost to Man United on the day and then had to wait for the result of the Newcastle game, and clearly the own goal, I think Damien Duff scored an own goal which kept us up and sent them down. But there is quite an auspicious omen for Hull City, which is that when we won the playoff final in 2008, 7 years ago, it was the 24th of May. The 24th of May, a year later, we played Man United at home and stayed up. It's the 24th of May again this year, and we're playing Man United again at home. Our opponents, assuming Sunderland do get the point tonight, which I know you're very keen on, will again be Newcastle, our rivals in terms of relegation, who are again playing a side in claret and blue. They were playing Aston Villa back in 2009. So there are some omens in Hull City's favour. Clearly, the big challenge they've got is they're 2 points adrift. It's not in their own hands. And, of course, the stats will tell you Stevie Bruce has never beaten Man United. And it's going to be a very, very difficult task. Obviously, if Lou van Gaal decides to put in a team of youngsters, but don't you ever underestimate Manchester United youngsters, it may be different. I think the nerves will be difficult. One of the biggest challenges, ironically, I believe, for both Newcastle and Hull City is that they're both playing at home. I don't think either of those grounds are particularly happy for the home sides at the moment. There's a lot of pressure coming from the stands, and that could add to the tension for everybody.
They've just given Hull and Sunderland fans a lot of hope, not so much Newcastle there. Now, let's say the worst does happen and Hull do go down. What sort of shape do you think that they're in? Because we've seen clubs go down and they've been very well managed financially and they can mount a promotion challenge the next season, but some go right to the bottom of the Championship.
And partly that's about finances, you say, but I think also it's about momentum. And sadly, I think if you look around the Premier League at the moment, you look at clubs of comparable stature and development and ask yourself why it is that West Brom, Swansea, Crystal Palace have had such a successful season, and clubs like QPR, Newcastle and Hull City have been struggling. And I think to the outside observer, the 3 that aren't doing so well look like troubled clubs. And I think that does make a huge difference for the way that the club perform. It's not just about money, it's about the whole atmosphere, it's about the engagement with the fans, it's about the spirit that means you're a happy camp, and that really does help. People say the fans can be the 12th man when it's going well. I think they can also mean you're down to 10 men when it's not going well. So in terms of finances, I think Hull City will be fine. The Allen family are very prudent owners. They've supported Steve Bruce magnificently in the transfer market, but I'm sure they'll have the relegation clauses built into player contracts, and they'll be able to reprofile the squad in the event that they do get relegated.
Are you surprised that they are in this position given last summer? Because Hull actually got a lot of praise for the business they did last summer, but some of those players just haven't worked out. You think of Hatem Ben Arfa as one of them. They've had injuries to Abel Hernandez.
Yep.
I mean, so is it a surprise having seen what they did in the summer?
I think there's several reasons. Obviously, every manager will cite injuries, and I haven't seen the analytic table of just which clubs had the worst injuries, but Hull have had significant injuries to major players. Obviously, Robert Snodgrass was a major hope for the club when he came in, and he's been out injured. Mohamed Diame's had the same problems. They've had Jelavic out injured, and strike force is massively important, obviously in a Premier League club. So I think that it's a disappointment, and certainly they've not been short of resources. And I know that Steve Bruce will be the first to say it's been very, very disappointing the way that the squad they've managed to assemble has performed this year.
Well, we have one more question away from Hull, because we haven't got yet a chairman's perspective on the Raheem Sterling situation at Liverpool. I mean, how do you feel the Liverpool, if it was your player, a key player who was going to say that he wasn't going to sign a new deal, but a key player, a young player, what would you do as a chairman?
I think the most disappointing thing for the club will be that and one has to assume it's his agent, has chosen to try and play this out in the public domain. And no one likes being held to hostage to fortune. My view would be that if Manchester City or any other suitor genuinely are prepared to pay 35 to 40 million pounds for Raheem Sterling in this window, I would wish him well, let him go. Because it's not a matter of proving a point of principle. It's about doing business. I think if you've got a player who has that attitude, who's being influenced by an agent that may be causing him problems and unsettling him, there's no guarantee he's going to have a good season next year. So my instinct would be to say that if you're going to get fair value for him, let him go, spend the money wisely and recycle it.
Paul, great to see you. Thanks very much for coming in. It's going to be a nervy final day, and of course you will be able to see that nervy final day on Sky. Hull against Manchester United, part of Survival Sunday. That's Sky Sports 1 from 2 o'clock. You'll see who goes down to the final day. The other two live games are also Chelsea against Sunderland and Newcastle against West Ham.